Hello, and I am Rafael Gutierrez, and today I'm going to talk about something that I think is really important, and that is self-defense seminars, especially as April is coming up, and April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Now, I've actually been online and I've looked at some comments about self-defense, and some things that are actually said are really interesting. For instance, I read one comment where a beauty contestant mentioned how she had actually taken martial arts her whole life, and someone tried to assault her, and she hit them, and they ran away. And she said she believed every woman should take martial arts. And some of the comments were really interesting. For instance, one of them was, women shouldn't need to take self-defense. People should be taught not to assault them. And that's correct. I actually agree with that. Except the problem is, I should also be allowed to keep my computer in my car without worrying about someone breaking into my car and taking it. But I'm not going to do that, and if I do, I'm going to lock the door and not leave it open so someone can take it. So one of the big things is, yes, it would be great to live in a world where there's no crime, but the truth is there is crime, and we can't just bury our head in our sand and say, well, it shouldn't be that way. So that's one of the big things that is important when we're talking about these seminars is we actually do have to talk to people about, yes, you shouldn't have to take a self-defense class, but when you look at the statistics, 1 in 7 women, I think is what it comes down to, will be sexually assaulted by the time they reach college age. That's a big number. You think about it, if you know more than 7 women, at least one of them has been assaulted. So that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the things we do have to talk about in self-defense. The other thing is, a lot of instructors don't really pay attention to the differences between men and women. What I mean by that is this. If you take the average man in the US, he's going to weigh about 196 pounds. You take the average woman, it's 166 pounds. Now you're talking about a 30-pound difference between a man and a woman. You think about that weight, that difference. If you're talking about boxing, you're talking about someone fighting 3 or 4 divisions above their weight class. Now, if your techniques work for same weight divisions, but they don't work for someone 3 divisions below that, this is not a technique that you want to be teaching in a self-defense seminar. The other thing to remember is there is a height difference. Men on average are 6 inches taller than the average woman. Again, this is average, so there is going to be some discrepancy. There are going to be some people who are a lot taller, some people who are a lot shorter, but on average 6 inches. Again, if we're dealing with striking arts, you can actually see how 6-inch difference in height will actually give someone a little bit of a benefit. Now, there are some arts that the height difference won't make that much of a difference. A lot of people who do judo will actually be able to work within that confinement. But if you think about it, even in wrestling, any collegiate wrestling, which is a great martial art, you have weight classes to make it fair. So you have to make sure that if you're teaching a self-defense for women, it's going to work for women against someone, assume 30 pounds heavier. Now, if you're an average man weighing if you're average man weighing 196 pounds, I actually did the math, and to tell you what the difference would be, the correlation between 30 pounds difference from a woman to a man, if you weigh, again, 196 pounds, it would be like if you were fighting someone who was 35 pounds heavier. So instead of being, you're talking about you'd be fighting someone who was 130 pounds, 230 pounds if you weighed 95 pounds. That's a big difference. If you think of wrestling someone like that, a lot of times this person will be able to just take you and throw you. So that's one of the big things that people forget, this weight difference. The other thing that a lot of people forget is when you look at statistics, most women are not attacked by a stranger. It's not usually it is sometimes, but it's not usually someone who doesn't know this person. Usually the person who assaults, what I end up finding, usually it's someone the person already knows. Now, that right there tells you something. If you know that someone has been arrested for assaulting someone before, and it would be a good idea not to be alone with that person. Then the other thing that is important to actually know when you're dealing with these self-defense is what a person is capable of doing. For instance, I was teaching in my class at one of the colleges. I was teaching certain techniques that some people said, well, okay, I can do that. And then I had someone else teach a technique. It was a wrestler did it, and one of the girls was, I can't do that. Not because she couldn't do the technique, but it was getting so close to someone was something that she felt uncomfortable with. And so a lot of times people will say, oh, well, just fight the uncomfortable. Well, if we can find a different technique that works for that size difference and doesn't put them in a position they feel too uncomfortable in, then it'd be better to use a different technique. I'm not saying that, oh, well, just do everything comfortable. What I'm saying is try to find stuff that the person who's taking the class will feel comfortable doing. If not, if they don't feel comfortable doing, they're not going to do it when they need it. Now, I also decided to look at what the typical assailant is. And what I did is I used, shameless plug, my book, Breaking Points. Some studies find that almost 70% of those arrested will be arrested again for the same crime. Now, I mention that because recently here in San Diego, we have Chelsea's Run. And Chelsea's Run was a run for to raise money and awareness for a little girl who was abducted and killed by someone. The sad part about it is this person had done it before. That's actually, he was released from jail and was allowed to go out in public. The other thing is, he didn't just stop with Chelsea. There was also another woman, young girl named Amber, who he also did exactly the same thing to. So what I'm trying to say is, you do have people who, if they've done a crime, they're going to do it over and over again. And a lot of psychologists will tell you, especially with people who do violent crimes like these, not crimes of opportunity, but violent crimes where they actually choose out victims, they're going to do it again. One of the things that women are protecting against is the idea of what happens after the attack. Now, we do have psychological scars. We will have people who will have post-traumatic stress and a lot of different things that they'll have to deal with. But there's also some stuff which, when you look at prison populations, which I use prison populations because this is a population which has been arrested for some criminal activity. Maybe it's not assault, but at least we have something that we can use on it. And what I found is there were some studies that suggested that 50% of all prison populations in the U.S. have hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a virus which, when you get, it's lifelong, and it is spread through either sexual contact, IV drug use, or actually if someone gets cut and you get cut too, you can end up getting this too. Now, why is it so high in prison populations? Well, one of the things we find is most people who go to jail have some correlation with drug use. And right now it's even scarier because the drugs of choice that seems to be taking off seems to be IV drug use. So it's one of the things that you have to be careful about. I guess the other thing is to tell women to tell anyone who's taking a sexual assault awareness seminar that you have someone who's doing IV drugs, this person has a high probability of having a bloodborne illness. This is not the type of person you want to be attacked from, so you may want to avoid them whenever possible. There are other diseases I found. Hepatitis B was 50%, 3% they found HIV, 20% hepatitis C, and this is just those are the ones I actually found, but they also found a large population had herpes, tuberculosis, syphilis, and if you do get these, some of these diseases will last you for the rest of your life. So a person who gets sexually assaulted may actually not just have to deal with the physical bruising that they got, but they can end up getting bacteria, viruses that will last them a lifetime, and they'll have psychological scars. So what we're actually teaching in self-defense is we're trying to prevent all these different things. And we have to be realistic and not just say, well, people should just learn not to attack anyone because, like I said earlier, I should be allowed to leave my computer on a park bench when I go to the bathroom, but there are criminals in the world, and women may not want to take self-defense courses. Now, I actually love a feminist, who was a martial artist, and most people don't even realize that she was one of the first women martial artists and the contribution she made for things like women's suffrage. Pretty much almost every martial artist I know has heard of Edith Margaret Gruden. This woman was a judoka. She actually did Japanese jiu-jitsu back in the time when judo was considered the sport and jiu-jitsu was the old application kata. And she actually felt it was appropriate for her to teach as many women as she could what was called at the time Japanese jiu-jitsu. The reason was she understood that you do need some sort of self-defense if you're a woman and you think you might be attacked. In her case, it was police. It is a time where if you are going into dangerous places, if you're working at night and you may come into unsavory characters, if you have an ex who is kind of crazy, learning a self-defense is actually important. And it's important to prevent a lot of other things. And to just think, well, I shouldn't have to learn it, is irresponsible. That's my opinion, and I hope it's not too heavy. I hope you enjoyed it. Good night.